I want to talk about 0 days and like 1 days. So perhaps you can just give us the definition, and then, people who are interested in doing this, it sounds like there's crazy money to be made if you find a 0 day in like Android or other operating systems.
Yeah, so I'll share one quick story, and people have heard me teach before, have heard me probably tell it, where back in 2014, I had said that year already, and it was a notable year because Microsoft, without giving any warning, not that they should have to give a warning, came out with these two mitigations in June and July 2014. It was isolated heaps and deferred free, and MEMGC. These were mitigations targeting Internet Explorer, trying to stop and doing a damn good job at stopping use after free exploitation from being possible. Because if you were watching Patch Tuesday around that time, like 2012, 13, 14, there were anywhere from 40 to 60 vulnerabilities being patched in Internet Explorer each and every month. So back in 2014, a good friend of mine, Corland Coder, also known as Peter van Ikhout, his real name, from Belgium. He has a site and a group called Corland.be. He's made an amazing plugin that so many of us have used called Mona.py, which is a plugin to Immunity Debugger and also WinDebug. He and I both at that same time were making money weaponizing and selling use after free exploit triggers to ethical buyers. And when those updates came out, when those mitigations came out in June and July 2014, it pretty much broke our attacks. Like we couldn't, the vulnerability was there, but we couldn't weaponize it and get code execution because the mitigations were doing such a good job. And when that happens, the price tag on the exploits, if you're going to sell them, go up, of course, because they're harder.
A 0 day and 1 day, just for people who are new, what's the difference? And then I want to talk about like the kind of money that you can make with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's subjective depending on who you ask with regard to the definition of what they are. But I think everyone pretty much agrees that a 0 day is a vulnerability that has been discovered by an individual or individuals that is not known to anyone else. Theoretically, I mean, there could be someone else out there who found the same bug as you and hasn't told anyone and kept it to themselves. But for the most part, it's a vulnerability that the majority of the world, including the vendor of that application or operating system, doesn't know about. And so if you have that, you've got different things you can do with it. You could, of course, use it to attack targets that are not going to be patched because there is no patch. You could sell it to different types of buyers. There are lots of different types of buyers out there. Definitely have stories there. So that's a 0 day. Like you may have heard somebody say there's unknown unknowns, there's known unknowns, and then there's known knowns. And that's a really strange, those are strange terms, but unknown unknowns would be 0 days or vulnerabilities out there that no one has discovered yet. That's all the vulnerabilities that are sitting there waiting to be found. Then there's known unknowns, which are vulnerabilities like 0 days. Someone's discovered it, but there's no patch yet. And until people start using it in the wild and it gets detected, or someone discloses it to an ethical buyer, then it remains unpatched. And then there's known knowns, which are vulnerabilities that have a corresponding patch, but sadly are still incredibly valuable, which gets us into 1 day or end day exploits. Those are exploits that are typically found through a technique called patch diffing or binary diffing, which I have recently done a webcast on the Off by One security channel. And basically that is some vendors out there like Microsoft don't obfuscate the patches. So when you download the patches on Patch Tuesday, you can do a differential using special tools between the new patch that came out against the unpatched version. And what you're able to detect there are the code changes at the assembly and the function level. So let's say a dynamic link library has 20,000 functions in it. If you're properly doing a diff, you may see that only 5 of those functions out of 20,000 have code changes. And that allows a skilled person to be able to go in and locate the patched code related to the vulnerability. So you get to learn 2 things. One, where the vulnerability is and what was patched, because one thing you can do is if you've got the skill to do so, you can try and weaponize it. And if you can weaponize it, organizations often are very slow at patching, and it may be months before they get patched. So the faster you weaponize that vulnerability, the more valuable it is. And there are buyers for those as well. And then the other benefit to patch dipping is you get to learn how Microsoft, in this case, with the example I'm using, how they go about patching certain types of bugs. And you can use that knowledge to go and hunt for other bugs that are very similar.
So tell us some of your stories, because I've heard you say that, or you've done presentations, I think it was at RSA, where you said like Android, you mentioned like a figure here, but like $2 million or something you could get for like a 0 day, right? Have you got any like cool stories that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because what can you share and not share?
Yeah.
So growing up and getting into this stuff hardcore in the 90s and the 2000s, I had a really tight group of smart people who were like, you need to use a handle. You need to use a pseudonym. I mean, now everybody uses it. We all play, Xbox or whatever, and everybody's got a handle. But back then, it was a way to kind of anonymize yourself because you didn't want to be associated with what you're doing. You could, end up like Kevin Mitnick or someone and go to jail. Anytime I would be doing things or talking on message groups, like back then it used to be Millworm, which is before Exploit DB, and you would always use your handle and always use VPNs so that people hopefully couldn't find you or know or associate you with that tag. And so having grown up with the people who helped me understand how to do that successfully is what allows me to remain anonymous on that perspective. I'm not someone who has gone out and tried to get a bunch of CVEs under my name or be known on exploit database for having published exploits, because honestly, like personally, it's a personal decision. I just don't care. I don't want to be associated with those things because I have a professional career and I've always been very ethical. And so some people may view those types of research activities or sales that you're doing as unethical. And I just, again, don't want that negative association. When you're selling exploits, there's different types of buyers out there, and that's what could get into potentially interesting stories. My stories are more about what people have asked me to do versus what I've actually done. I have a wife and a daughter, and I don't want... I know people, I won't name them, but there's one guy who's like, I have a black van in front of my house 24/7. And he's in another country, outside the US anyway. And I'm like, no, you don't. Because that sounds like a story. He has taken multiple videos and photos and sent them to me. And he's like, see, it's there. It's always there because they're keeping an eye on him. Like, who needs that in their life? But the ethical buyers out there, you can, of course, go to the affected vendor like Microsoft or Apple, and they typically have bug bounties. And if they look at what you've discovered and they think it's worth something, they might pay you for it. So that's one way. And that's seen as ethical because you're only giving it to the affected vendor and they can get it patched. You have to sign an agreement, like a non-disclosure agreement, and you can't violate that or they can come after you to get their money back. There's also, there are things like CanSec West and the Pwn to Own challenge where people work on exploits and then they go and do it in a competition. And the agreement is it doesn't get public, it goes to the affected vendor. So those are seen as more ethical routes. You can go, it's still seen as ethical, but it's kind of the next level up, which is you could go to a company like iDefense or ZDI, Tipping Point ZDI, the 0 Day Initiative. Both of those were started by Pedram Amini a long time ago. He's kind of like what I consider the forefather of the whole bug bounty realm. The way, I don't quite understand their business model or where they get compensation for it, but they would buy from you the exploit trigger. And once they validated it, they pay you, if let's say it's a browser-based exploit and we're talking 10 years ago. If it's against Chrome or Internet Explorer, it would have been worth like 10 to 20,000 US dollars. And that's for a exploit against like Internet Explorer, use after free, remote code execution bug. So when that company like ZDI or VeriSign would have, or not, VeriSign used to own iDefense, that's why I said VeriSign. I think Accenture owns them now. They would then take the exploit and they would disclose it to the affected vendor and get it patched, and no one would know about it publicly. So again, I don't quite understand what the benefit to them is. I don't know if they have an agreement with like antivirus vendors or maybe with the affected vendor who pays them. I don't know. Then if you take a step back from that, it's when you start to cross into what people would consider the unethical actions. Every country almost has an intelligence agency, and those intelligence agencies absolutely have like computer network operators, whatever you want to call them, who do offensive operations, who go out and will launch campaigns against their adversaries, which could be nation states or other targets. And so when you're selling now you don't go up to the NSA or whoever it is and knock on the front gate and say, hey, I've got an exploit, you want to buy it? There are proxies out there. There are contract companies or other entities you can sell them to, and then they will buy them from you, and then they'll go and do what they do on the back end. I have no idea. There are then And then you go another step. So the reason I consider that a step back from kind of going to the affected vendor or iDefense or ZDI is that those are making sure the thing gets patched. When you start selling it to a entity who might use it to launch nation state campaigns, now it's being used to attack real world targets. You don't know what's going on with that bug. And even worse, if you take another step back or go another layer of the onion, you could sell it to the highest bidder, which could be someone who is a foreign adversary, a nation state that's an unfriendly or sanctioned nation that might use that exploit against your very own country. They'll probably, and as you go to the more unethical route, the price tag gets higher.